And this is something which I personally realized its entire scale and scope once I entered the classroom and solved it. Because, of course, I was looking at the pictures on the online module names, but still it is fragmented. But once you see all, oh my God, what happened? And what happened, I think, is an interesting case study in itself. How come and why women are better than men in qualifying for this course? Because you are here based on very rigid, objective criteria. So I hope that we can use this as a starting point for additional research in the future. Maybe it's really interesting something, I don't know. But as a matter of fact, we have this gender aspect. And I wanted to use this as an introduction to the topic the afternoon. One of the occasions, one will be coming back on to this on several occasions, actually two days in the course of those 2 weeks, on gender dimensions and environmental unsustainability.
Introduction, please.
For obvious reasons there are, and we know that there are, but how exactly we can define them? What can we do about this? For our colleague on the gender dimensions in Pakistan is much more qualified than the
Thank you for your introduction, Andre. It is true, I noticed the first thing when I walked into this room this morning. That's my professional hazard. I walk into a room with lots of people and immediately my intake is, wow, there's more women than men. Where are the men? And I counted not even 5, not even my 1 hand. 4.
Professional.
But of course then I think, well, you know, it's also true that particularly in this region we are seeing more and more proportion of women in university level education. So many countries do have more than 50% women in university and the rest boys. So perhaps that could be a reflection. This composition we have today could be a reflection. So I am gender practice leader from Bratislava Regional Center of UNDP, and I'm originally from Japan, but I am now living in Bratislava, Slovakia. I don't know you. I know that you have a little bit of my bio information in your package, but I don't know you. But then we don't have time to do all the introductions. So I want to ask a few questions. You know that UNDP is divided into different groups of countries. And the one that's based in Bratislava is called Regional Center for Europe and the CIS. Do you know which countries we cover under this name? Okay, so which of you are from those countries covered by UNDP, Europe and the CIS? Okay. And which of you are from the EU countries? Okay. Anyone from Latin America? We also have a region there. No? Anyone from the Africa region? 2? Anyone from my region? None. Pity. Right. And how many of you are still living in the country you were born? Okay. And how many of you think are from the countries where gender equality is guaranteed by law?
Everywhere.
1, 2, 3.
By
Yeah.
law.
Yes. Tell me. Are your countries have constitution guaranteeing equality between men and women? No, you're not putting your hands up?
I'm not sure.
You are not sure? Okay. How many of you are from the countries where equality actually does exist between men and women? Never mind the law. 1, 2. Fully.
No, not existing here.
No? Okay. Well, never mind that.
Women who go, I'm Bulgarian. Women who go
Right. Oh, okay.
But it's not full equality. It is.
Well, in this session this afternoon, we're going to look at these questions. What are gender dimensions? When we talk about gender, gender dimensions, gender issues, gender aspect, what do we actually mean by that? We also ask ourselves the question, what do they matter? Why do they matter to environmental sustainability? If we know what gender is, why do they matter? Why do we have to discuss that in our discussion related to environmental sustainability? And the last question, what can we do to make sure gender dimensions are properly addressed in environmental sustainability discussions? I noticed that this morning, in each presentation, the issue of gender popped up. In every presentation, every speaker made reference to that. But do you think that we are addressing the issue adequately? Or is there more need to be done? Or do you feel that, okay, let's discuss these issues? Yes?
I think first of all, about gender dimensions, from my point of view, it's like opportunities, then comes health, education, participation in society, and I would like to say why do they matter to environmental sustainability? Okay, when you ask that question, immediately I imagine the situation, for example, in Africa. Recently I was making research and I found there was there was a country where both women and men had equal opportunities, and there was not so like the country was not so developed, but there was equality between genders. And even each of them know what work they are going to do. For example, to collect, in Armenia, for example, men go for fishing, but it was vice versa. Women had to fish or collect, I don't know, food. So, I mean, they participate, for example, in the work, in the activities directed to environment. Sustainable environment.
Good. Okay, so let's go to the very, very first question. I think you have given a lot of food for thought to this question. What is gender? Do we actually know that? Okay, I hear something coming up. Yes, okay, someone else? I'll come back to you. Anyone else? Yes, please?
Maybe it's the roles that society assigns to males and females.
Okay. Something else to add?
Almost the same things.
Almost the same. Okay.
Maybe it's a concept which is built within a society.
Okay. So it is associated with sex because we are born usually with one sex. Yes? And somehow that gives us particular roles or positions in society, and that's what we call gender in general. It's a very generic or a general terminology sometimes. But what does gender actually do to individual men and women? What does it mean? We are living in a society where we know gender exists. Now, what does it mean to individual man and woman?
Equal in rights and responsibilities.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, please.
Rights may not be equal, so probably it says it's a like indicator how to behave. Yeah.
It's an
Like men try to behave like a man and woman like a woman.
Okay, so it tells you how you should behave if you're a man or a woman. Yes. Different, did you say? Certain roles. Okay. And these certain roles the same for men and women or different?
Different.
Actually, for
If we mean by gender a social role given by a society, then we expect certain roles and responsibilities to be conducted by men and women.
Okay. Yes.
Pretty
It's
much
the same. Okay. Yes, please.
For me, it means that you cannot move society, you cannot progress with only men, you cannot also progress with only women. It needs to complement.
Needs to work together to progress. Yes.
It also means that you're programmed to be in a certain way, because if you look at children's stories, for example, girls usually pick up the princess's roles
And no, but it starts from
Yes.
seriously, it starts from early childhood, and then you're programmed to be in a certain way, and unless something totally different happens, to have a breakthrough in your
There's an interesting YouTube program that you can look for, where a group of people studies Disney movies, cartoon movies. Now you can see that Disney cartoon movies do have very independent-minded girls as main characters. No, I'm not talking about Snow White in the older days, but even in the recent years they have made Pocahontas. That's not quite recent, sorry. I forget sometimes. And the last one was the one with long hair. Yes, and she was very independent, but what happened at the end? A boy came to rescue her from the tunnel. Yes. So there was an interesting study about this as well. Yes, you had something to say?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that I think on a very individual level, it's also about the roles in the family and then how you educate your own kids. Yeah, which you mentioned.
Okay. So it seems to me that there is a consensus that gender actually somehow determines what you are supposed to do in your society based on a gender that is you. Yes, so if you're a woman, you're supposed to behave this way, you're expected to behave such a way, you're expected to do these things, responsibilities are changed, are different, and so on. But then it comes to the question, okay, so now we're standing in the room, I'm standing in the room, you're sitting down, in a room with very qualified female students. And there's only 4 male students. Right?
Badly qualified.
Equally qualified. We are all equally qualified.
What's outnumbered?
But
just the sheets.
But if you think about it, the number of women in tertiary education and above has increased in the last 10-20 years. Do you agree?
Yes.
So do you think that perhaps 20-30 years ago there was an expectation that women do not go to educate themselves to the higher level?
No.
That they didn't have to, or they are not encouraged to do this? But now that expectation is changed.
My grandmother had a PhD.
Was she one of the 50% of the PhD population, or was she one of the 1 out of 200 students? Right? So it's a proportion thing. More and more women are now, in a way, taking on a role that may have been played by men in the past as educated, qualified professionals, students. Yes, please.
I have a question. The same applies to employment, because in my country, it's Hungary. I mean, the number of women in higher education, in university level, is much higher than men. Yet, when it comes to employment, then it goes vice versa.
Right. That is also true. We'll look at the employment statistics in a minute, but it's true that although in education, statistics suggest that we are doing differently from the past, but in employment, that changes may not be happening at the same pace. Now, we just move on to the next question. What does gender mean to a family? Then we talked about different roles that we play. What does it mean to a family?
It's the same, just define the role of male or female in the family.
Okay, so there is a certain expectation of a woman to play in the family and men to play in the family.
Yeah.
Is this the case? Okay. So what does it mean to community?
Community, of course, expects from each woman to behave as it was supposed to play her role, and the man to play his role.
Okay.
First of all, it is connected with demography. I mean, women born children, so they have a big role in demography, in the country's demography, for example.
Okay. And what kind of roles do men play in the community which are not played by women? And what kind of roles women are more likely to be playing in the community than men? Yes?
Men allocate the resources while women are supposed to complement what the men gives to them.
Okay. So men are more leading and women are playing more complementary role. Okay.
At least what's the same.
Okay. Any other views on this? Yes.
Some views in my country in Lithuania exist that man is the head, but woman is the neck. So the head is seeing where the neck is turning.
Okay. So that means women actually lead.
Yes. Yeah, but in the same way they are always behind. In a way, extremely when it comes to high positions or certain leading roles.
Okay. So then we just expand our questions a little bit to the higher level. All these different roles, how are they reflected or how do they influence the policy making of the country? That we have, yes, please.
That is the question of equality, whether in a country male is supposed to decide to make a decision or a woman. So here we have, I think, the biggest gap. I mean, whether it is equal, decision making is equal, or male are more responsible for this action.
Okay, so let's think. Continue thinking. What does it mean if there is no equality in policy making, if there is no gender equality in policy making? What does it mean to us and what does it mean to the environment? Now, yes?
Are we talking about equality in decision making or equity in decision making? I think I was talking about equality in decision making or equity in decision making.
Equity. Interesting. Can someone explain the difference between equality and equity?
I think equity refers to access to opportunities, whereas equality is always the outcome of the process.
Okay.
So I think if we want to see how decision making process is conducted, we have to look at the equity of men and women in this process. And it seems like, at least in our region, there is no equity in this.
Okay.
In this respect.
Good. Anyone else have a view on this? Equity in policy making, decision making? So one, we don't. Yes, please.
Could you please explain it again? Because for me, equity it's a stock on the stock market, you know. Like a share stock equity.
Good point. But I'm not a linguist, so I will not go in there. But let's say that we have equal number of men and women participating in policy-making processes. And the other thing is whether the policies actually support equality between men and women. The policies that come out from this decision-making body. So one question is, does the decision-making body already have equal number of men and women? Inputs, are they equal? And then there's output issue, which is the policies. Do they actually benefit men and women? Right? Is this?
Yes.
Yes, please.
We have to carry that we have to work together with equity different. Because when you are in a family, you say that you are equal. That means that when it comes to food, we should have the same portion. But when it comes to equity, I am sick, for example. I will suffer from, let's say, I have high blood pressure, so I need a specific food from me. In this case, we are equal in the family, but my needs are different from your needs. So in this term, equity is different from equality when it comes to a household.
It would be the same in policy making too. Because when you're making policies and you have one policy, let's say, give me an example, education. Okay, we're talking about environment, energy. So we talk about providing energy for all. Now, if you have one policy, how this energy will be distributed, but you're actually dealing with people with different needs. Just like you were saying, in each household, you have one person who needs to have more sugar. You have another person who cannot have sugar for medical reasons. And you have to provide the food in a way that both needs are satisfied. You have a large population with diverse range of people. One population said we need to have extra this, and another population group said no, we need to have extra that. And one strategy may not address both needs. Yes?
Perhaps if we understand everything concept your function as fair distribution and or just distribution, it doesn't necessarily have to be 50-50. It can be proportional if it respects other principles of being just and fair to all the parties involved.
Okay. So 50-50 may not be the equality in outcome. 50-50 may be the equity issue, but it may not be the equality in outcome. Because different needs may mean something else. For example, let's think about in some countries where a population living in the very mountainous areas have a view that girls don't need education as much as boys. Okay? Now, then there comes a new idea that no, actually both boys and girls should receive education at the same level. So then you built a school in a village and said to all parents, now from now on, all girls and boys have to come to this school. And then you expect all of them to walk 15 kilometers every day to go to the school. And that doesn't happen. Why is that? Maybe that the parents said, no, that school doesn't have any male teacher, and I'm not sending my girls to a school with only male teacher. Or maybe the families are saying that the 15 kilometers is too dangerous for my daughters. If you're not providing safety measures, I'm not sending my girls to this school. There may be these reasons that you need to take into account so that equality in outcome is ensured, that both girls and boys receive education. Yes? Was that a good example? Yes? Okay, these lines indicate the women's participation in labour market. The top line is the countries from this region. So you can see that it's going down over the years. The middle one is the world average. So now it's going up and it's caught up with the data of this region, which had been very good in the past, or better than other regions in the world. And the bottom is the EU countries. So it's also going up like the world average, but it's not as fast as.
Sorry, which countries were?
The top one is the countries of this region, what we call Europe and CIS in UNDP. The middle is the world average, and the bottom is the EU. So you can see the countries in this region did very well about 20 years ago, or maybe a little more than 20 years ago. But the number is now going down. Less and less participation of women in the labour market. Still, it's better than the EU average. However, this doesn't mean that we are actually doing very, very well in terms of women's economic participation and opportunities. These graphs show how much women earn, how less women earn than men. So the whole thing is what men earn, say average 1 hour per hour. Women earn this red bit only. Right, so you do the same type of work for the same length of time, and women get paid less.
So then the greatest equality is in Serbia?
Yes, the best equality is recorded in Serbia.
Okay.
Anyone from Serbia?
No, why Cyprus is in this region?
Cyprus is unfortunately or fortunately part of UNDP's Europe and CIS region.
How come?
Yes, how come?
Well,
It's a mystery.
Cyprus joined lately EU. Yes, and we cover Europe. You can cover Europe. Yes, and then Cyprus, under many conventions, till recently was a developing country.
There you go. Yes.
Why not one?
Huh? Oh no, there's not all of it. We actually have 27 Yes. Yes, please.
I just a small remark. I come from Belarus, and the women's average salary is 75% of that of men. That's also what I learned recently for my case study for this course. But it's not because women are paid less because they're women, but because educational system and I don't know the legacies of the past make women be employed in these less paid sectors like education, social work, and things like this. So, and these are, of course, their salaries are less, but it doesn't mean that they discriminated in terms of gender.
Okay, let me ask you this question. There's one industry which is very lucrative. Which one is that? We'll get there in a minute. Oil industry. In oil industry, women are employed as well as men, but men are have the jobs that are very well paid within the oil industry, whereas women occupy the positions within the oil industry which are not so well paid. Okay. So there is definitely, you are saying, segregation of jobs depending whether you're a woman or man. Now, why would that? Why is that happening? I mean, we have in this region good education track records for both women and men, and now women outnumbering men in universities, and they still end up in the sectors which are lower paid than men. Why is that? Yes.
Probably, I don't come from this region, but I think it's probably because those sectors allow them to still have time for their families. If they are working offshore in an oil company, they won't have time for their children. So I think it's about opportunities and capabilities of women. Women cannot abandon their children to be offshore earning millions while their kids are at home.
Okay. Yes, please. And then
also, it's like society constraints in terms of mentality. For example, even in our parliament, although at this very moment we have also president women and finance minister women, etc. But if you look in the parliament, the representatives of the parliament are also the majority still men. Although they're all, those more behind to prepare all documents and assistance, they are mostly women. Because I know this is like mentality, like you just assist, but the decisions we make in some terms.
Okay.
Lower positions are women.
Lower positions occupied by women. Okay. What can we do to explain this situation? Like you say, yes, women have children with child care responsibilities, or at least it's perceived that women should be providing greater care responsibilities than men. I was sitting in a meeting with UNDP employees, my colleagues from all over the world. And the question was, what do you do in your spare time? And all women said, well, if I ever had spare time, I would like to read a book, or I would like to listen to music, or learn some new language, or dance. What do you think the men said? They said, in my spare time, I play with my children. And every single of them, if they have children. So my question is, why is this a spare time activity for men and not a spare time activity for women? Where does this assumption coming from? Yes.
I hope you got what they said. At their spare time, they play with the children. Playing, but for us, we take care of them. So probably they're treating the children like dogs. It's a fantasy, it's not realistic.
I mean, this does raise a question about that, but it's true. Women do tend. I mean, I met a group of civil servants in Georgia, for example, and they're all occupying a lower middle level jobs. And I asked them, why do you think that is? And they said, but higher level positions are not for women. Because you would be asked to work longer hours, you would have more responsibilities that you have to spend more energy on. Now there is an interesting, yes, Henrietta.
I don't know if I may say something but I think to kind of defend men here. It's also because men are still expected to be the ones to bring money, and then it means that they have to spend time at work. I had many men who say, "I wish my wife worked, and I would have more time to maybe be with children, and she would go to work." Yes, so this is still this kind of stereotype that men has to be the one to bring money.
That's a very good example, because if I may go back to Georgia again, and I met someone who said he took paternity leave, but he couldn't tell this to any of his friends, because his friends, he thought, would not understand why he would like to stay home and change baby's nappies. But he wanted to.
But at the UN there is paternity leave also.
Yes.
There is paternity, and the father had the right to take the paternity leave.
But the right is not always there for you to use, isn't it? Right?
Ah, they always use it.
We have rights, but it's not always somehow allowed to use it. So no one is stopping us from getting highly responsible jobs, men or women, but somehow we use our own screening mechanisms sometimes to say this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. Same for boys. I met young boys from South Asian countries who said, you know, when I'm walking down the street, I don't want to pick up a fight. No, I'm not, I want just take a walk. But if there is another boy who's like wanting to pick up a fight, and if you don't pick up a fight with him, then you're like a wimp, and your friends, your peer will ridicule you. And it's very hard for a teenager to be in that position, so you're forced to take part in some fight, and you don't want to. So it's not just girls who have all these rules and the roles that you have to conform to, but boys also do the same. Okay, now going to the next one. These graphs show the years that women and men spend depending on dependency on pension. So left bars indicate women, right bars men. They get shorter. Right? In all countries, the life expectancy average, men have shorter life expectancy. However, the amount of years that women spend as pensioners is longer. Not only because women live longer, but also they retire earlier.
And may I add here a little bit more pessimism to this picture. Because man dies earlier, and we have, no, that's a real issue. Man dies earlier, and we have a lot of single household women pensioners. And in addition, their pension is typically lower because lower contributed salary, shorter period of contribution. And it's very problematic issue of high poverty among this group of population, because they lost income and they lost support network. That single pensioners household, and for instance in Moldova, when we dealt with social benefits, it was a real issue, because how to select them, how to find them, how to support them.
So what do you think of the level of resilience these households have towards external economic shocks? If you're a single woman-headed household, your husband dies before you, you're depending on this pension which is lower.
No, but usually in Poland, for example, if the husband dies before the woman,
then if he had the higher pension than she had, then she receiving his pension. So actually she has his pension if they were married. So it's not
even if his pension is lower.
No, if his was lower, but usually women's got lower pensions. Yes. So actually, after the death of the husband, the women receive the higher pension. So it's not like that she stays with 200 euro. Yes, for example. So it's different. And for example, in Poland now we have actually the huge discussion about this pension system and how long we will work, because European Union forced us to change the regulation and we will have to work until 67 years old. It's really weird, but actually women don't want to work as long as men, because after they have to work, they usually are active. Yes, so they work. They have jobs. They work in they work at home. Yes, they are responsible for children. So they feel that actually they deserve for longer retire than men. So, like, of course, there are feminists who say that we are wasting money and yeah, we can earn more for our pension and so on. But the average of women, actually, most of the women, normal women, just prefer to go retire earlier, just to have more time for themselves, to read the books, to go and learn dance and whatever they want. So it's. I know your point of view, and I heard it many times, but for
similar study was actually made in Slovakia. I think 3 years ago there was a study also asking questions to women, when do you want to retire and what do you want to do, and they all wanted to retire earlier than men, and many of them said they wanted to look after their grandchildren, they wanted to spend more time with their grandchildren, and it's their time to look after. So there are, of course, I think it would be very wrong to think that all women think alike. Yes. In this room we have many women from different backgrounds, and obviously we do not agree on everything about life choices, and men in this room will not agree on everything either. But if we look at the indication of differences on policies and the indication of policies on the differences as a result of different gender roles that we play, then there is a need for us to think, when we are thinking of different policy interventions or programmatic interventions, you need to think what could be the differences that different population groups are going through. What kind of experiences do they have? And here you can also expand your thinking not only to men and women, but to older people, to younger people, to people with disabilities, people from minorities, people with different language skills. I mean, you can think of all kinds of different population groups in your country. And if you think that one policy would have a very different impact on all these population groups, you may need to modify your approach so that all these groups can benefit from that policy, if the policy was there to benefit the population. I think most of us are actually from urban areas, am I right? We talked about examples of women collecting fuel wood this morning. But if you look at urban areas, there is also an indication that men and gender indications to environment. But just to show that in EU countries also men and women earn differently. So this is the mean equivalent net income of single persons, women, the blue-green, and men, the yellow-green. Men earn more than women in EU countries. So what does it mean if women on average earn less than men?
They have to marry.
What?
What?
They have to marry.
What does it mean? What kind of, if anything happens, like an earthquake or natural disaster, and you have less money, what happened to you? What would be the implications? On the other hand, I think I heard at lunchtime that alternative energy can be actually expensive. Yes, that the sustainable alternative energy can be costly. Now, if you're already earning less and your country ask you to invest more on alternative sustainable energy? Would that be harder for people who are earning less now? Unless you have, your policy has different ranks of tax or other incentives or something, right? So if you have a household headed by a person who's earning less, not because of the capacity or capability, but just because the person is a woman, that would be hard. And then if you lose a man in natural disaster who has been a breadwinner of your household, then, and you haven't been working, and you haven't developed your skills to be employable, and suddenly you become the person who has to support the rest of the family. Then what would be the implication on the household?
The vulnerability of the woman increases, then the household gets into more problems, then the tendency that the woman to go into crime, like prostitution or human trafficking, because we have that in Africa, where actually women help in trafficking children. Yeah, I think it will lead to more vulnerability in the society.
So would it not be better if you had households which did not have to go through this? I mean, there were cases in Turkey where many households where women have not been out working so over the years because they had they left university and then they stayed. They spend more time at home, their employability was not as good as men, and now they have to work and support the rest of the family. That's very tough, not only for the women themselves, but for the rest of the family. This is a graph of, again, EU countries showing how much time men and women spend on care work. Sometimes care work is paid and sometimes care work is unpaid. What would be the type of unpaid care work?
Child minding.
Child minding.
Household.
Household.
How you spend taking care of your household, basically.
Yes.
Volunteer.
Volunteer. Okay, but who else in your households that need care apart from children?
Parents.
Elder people.
Yeah, even the church. The church uses the women for their services. They clean the churches and it's free of charge for the church. But
Right.
any man working for the church gets paid.
Okay. So. So on average, women spend more time on care work. Now imagine a natural disaster where there will be more demand for care work. That if there is a natural disaster and your family loses a person or another person becomes sick and there's more demand for care work. If we look at this graph, who will be taking on extra care work? Who are more likely to be responsible for the additional need for care work?
Women.
Man.
That could be possible if women weren't there in the household anymore, because that can also be a case. Now, in the Asian tsunami in 2004, many women died in that natural disaster. And it became an issue. And one big issue, because who's going to take care of children and elderly and sick? Men have to go and work as well. They have to earn money. And can they take on extra work as well? They don't have time for that. They're just coping themselves with the change as a result of the natural disaster. So having such rigid distribution of work and division of labor within household, within the community, within the country may not be a good idea when you have to cope with a large change, which can happen anytime. This is a graph showing the car ownership of single-person households. So basically saying that when a woman is one household, they tend to own, they're unlikely to own a car than a man who is the one-person household. What does it mean?
They emit more GHG emissions, men.
Right.
Men drive women.
So, so that, yes, that's what it means, that the contribution men and women make to climate change, to emission are different. Can you think of other situations where, because of the different roles, because of the different expectations men and women have in their lives, that their contribution to environment or environment sustainability can be different? Yes?
This is an instance from an area in India. It's a hilly area, Uttarakhand region, where women in the villages, there was a proposal of cutting down trees. So the women, because they were close to the area, they were staying there, the husbands had migrated elsewhere, and the remittance was one of the ways of, one of the sources of income. But the women were close to the villages, they caught hold of the tree, and when the officials came to cut it down, they did not move away. They hugged the tree, and they stood there for quite some time, and it's a very famous incident called the Chipko movement. From there, that is how they stopped deforestation, and it's marked in
a good, interesting example. Anyone else? Yes, please.
And also, during disasters, natural disasters, it is very important that women are educated and they know how to behave during these disasters. Connected with the environment, I think having knowledge about how to behave and at the same time what to do not to harm it is more essential too.
Yes.
Maybe also recycling. I know it's a bit stretched, but in general, if women tend to stay home and take care of the households, maybe they're more in charge of where the trash goes and how.
Yes, it's true. I think there's also a study that I think more than 60% of the consumption in households is determined by women worldwide. So women make decisions what to buy. So, for example, women may be making decisions what kind of washing machines that the household should have. So it's up to that woman to decide whether to buy low electricity consumption machine or not. But another interesting example from natural disaster is in Haiti, when they had the hurricane, more men died. And that was because they have this role of protectors of the family, the expectation on them to be strong was so much more than women that they had to go and rescue people, and as a result they died themselves. So more men died because they had to play this very important role of rescuing and protecting other people. So different expectations again can play out quite devastatingly on both men and women. Okay. I will not skip this one. So there are different impacts on resilience, vulnerability, participation, control, which are all related to environment and development sustainability. Okay? If you want a household which is resilient to external shocks, then you have to have a strong unit in which men and women or all people, adults in a household can alternate their roles. Because if you have such rigid division of labor and you lose one role, then the other role may not be able to support two roles now. So if you can just share both roles, like there is a household where a man gets sick and for 2 years out of job. This happened to a friend of mine. her father was out of job for 2 years. If her mother wasn't working, no one was supporting the household. We have countries in South Asia and Southeast Asia where more women go out to work abroad, leaving their children behind in care of the other members of the family. If fathers are not taking care of them, who's going to take care of them? And there are many countries in Asia where the labor of their women are much more in demand than the labor of men. So for example, countries who would like to have labor from those countries prefer to have female labor than male labor, because maybe they're looking for different kinds of jobs. Again, these gender dimensions play out a role, because in many Middle East countries, they would like to have domestic help. So they're looking for female to come and work for them, not men. If they have construction work going on, they're looking for male labor to come to their countries to work. So then again, these kind of differences make a huge, the gender differences make impact on who can get a job and who cannot get a job. So, if we think that these differences that are expected on men and women, gender differences, have impact on resilience, because you as an individual, if you are not encouraged to educate yourself, and education is very important to have to ensure resilience of you as an individual to survive in any circumstances. And if you are not encouraged to do that, then you're less likely to be resilient than the others who are educated. If you don't have cash in hand, and if it's not because of your capacity, but because of the circumstances you're in, just because you're a boy or girl, you may not be able to have access to cash income, then again, you will be influenced. Your vulnerability, your capacity to be resilient would all be influenced by that. Now let's look at participation. How do you know if you're participating in policy making? If there are policy debates on the environment, sustainability, how do you know you're taking part in that? Because that's going to affect you and your life. How do you participate in that process?
For example, if you have the right to vote, for example, if it's going to be deforestation, there is going to trees are going to be cut. So if you think that it harms your environment and you have the right to vote, so this is a part of your participation in that process.
Okay, good example. Yes?
NGOs and civil society with different movements. I think it's also empower citizens to participate and to have a more significant role in general decision making at the national level.
Okay.
Getting your voice heard, like through NGO participation or voting, not just voting for elections, but also for small decisions that take place. It can be an informal way of meeting people, asking them whether in a village this thing should be done. That's probably
good.
So using mechanisms that are in place at the local level, for example, commune level or municipality level. You can participate in municipal council meeting or commune council meeting and have your say there about what is going on.
Okay.
Public hearings also.
Consultations.
Okay. And yes, please.
Do we call it representative democracy? Yeah.
Yes.
Do we have such term, representative democracy? Yes.
Yes,
So you
yes.
you vote for
someone else to represent you.
Yes.
Yes. So that's one way of participating.
Yeah.
Now, who are participating in your country's policy making? You are.
I vote.
I vote, but it's not.
It doesn't work. Yes. It's balance. It doesn't work in balance.
It's about having rights and exercising them. Exactly. The ways to participate are very limited. Only NGOs, as you rightly mentioned, is the most.
And within the household, who takes decisions?
The man.
So, well, like I said before, 70% of consumption decisions within households are made by women, right? What vegetables to buy today, what light bulbs to buy. I'm talking about the world average, right? I'm talking about rural and urban households all together mixed up. These world average can be misleading sometimes in that sense. But if we talk about control, okay, not just participation, but control.
But do we talk only about the country's level, or should we talk about the local level? Because actually we can have quite huge impact on our local level, and actually most of the decisions actually are made on the local level, which are we are most interested. Because if there is going to be built, for example, supermarket in the place where is right now green area, so actually we can have some action against that, yes?
Yes.
So that's much easier, and it's like, because country level is far away usually, yes.
But at the local level, who are participating? Do you see participation of, in a level of participation, do you see everybody being represented?
If you want to be. It depends, of course, but if you want, I think, in my in my point of view, it's yes.
Yes, please.
Sometimes it's also a matter of choice or imposer.
Choice and
an imposer. Imposer. Something that is imposed to you.
Okay.
If you are a very poor person who just lives for today, not for tomorrow, you don't care for that.
Right.
So in this case, you are supposed to let's say, ignore the system because you don't get anything from the system. You are not thinking of what's going on later on. You just live for today. And there are other group of people who have, let's say, a safe life, and they are interested to know what's going on later on. So sometimes I think there is no unique answer for that. It depends on the context and how people make a balance between choice and the opportunity that is given.
And also personal aspirations, because some community members, for example, the city where I'm coming from, the youth movement is very strong and it really has implications. It's also represented in municipality, etc. But others, even with the same group, social group, they're not interested in that. So also personality matters in education, and what roles and how everything goes in the family and what education they get actually also matters.
Right. Yes. Okay. So in fact, even in education or something, before you even get to participation, there are issues that we need to be looking at, and which may determine the level of participation that you actually do. Because if you don't have any money, even before you get to the participation level, you're saying they have no choice but just focus on what they can do for today, right? So even before you get to participation, there are issues that you need to look at. We talked about governance this morning, but there are many issues that we do need to be looking at even before thinking who can actually participate. Are we actually creating an environment where everybody are on equal footing to participate? Or do we need to make sure that whoever is not on equal footing should come up to the level of equal footing so that they can participate? Right? So but the control issue, just very quickly, one issue that was very much debated in the Rio +20 conference was reproductive rights of women. I mean, if you think about it, in order to increase the population by 1 billion, the last 1 billion was made in 11 years. So the population is growing fast and faster and faster. It took 100 years to come up to another 1 billion if it was like 100 years ago. But now, it only took 11 years. And that matters to the environment, doesn't it? Having more women in this world, and not having more children in this world, having more people in this world, and not having enough resources to support them. So women's reproductive rights actually mean a lot to sustainability. If women don't have control over their own bodies, they don't have their reproductive rights, do they? And this was a very contentious point debated in Rio Plus 20. And in the end, it didn't make a clear way into the final text. Yes, please.
Was the church, especially the Catholic Church, part of the contribution at Rio Plus 20? Because I want to hear their own views. Because they are creating problem in Africa where they tell men, or even the women, you go to sin for using contraceptive. It was even the issue with the spread of HIV, where even something as simple as condom is a sin. The Catholic Church is using it as a way of increasing the population in Africa. So were they part of the discussion in Rio Plus 20? I'd love to know. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So, if women are not allowed to have that right, exercise their right, control over their own bodies. Yes.
Sorry, can I ask what was the argument at Rio Plus for women not having the reproductive rights? And briefly, I mean, one of the main arguments.
It was a lot of influence from the Catholic community. It was not against the environment sustainability, but the force came from the argument against women having reproductive or control over their reproductive health.
But actually, Catholic Church is not against having control over it, but against abortion, for example. Yes,
abortion is a right to control.
And there is some
health.
Education, let's say, Catholic education, which actually give you some ideas how you can protect yourself having a baby, like control your body in a natural way. So it's
yeah, that's also true. There are ways,
but not in Africa. Not in Africa. They're in control of the society.
I know that in Africa it's a huge case, yes, but it's.
I wouldn't say just Africa. To be honest, these problems or situation you can see many other Catholic countries, and Catholic community is not the only community which would support this view. Okay, there are other views, but abortion is seen as a way of controlling your own reproductive health.
I just wanted two points to this discussion. The first is that it's not only an environmental concern, but also there is a strong correlation, at least in Hungary, between the number of children and poverty. And I believe it's a two-way correlation. And on contraceptives, it's also a huge problem in rural areas in Hungary, that they are living in poverty, but the fertility rate is much higher than, for example, in the cities or in most developed areas. However, it's very difficult to do something, not just because, cultural things, but also for contraceptives, you need some, you have to take it every day, and that's not in the culture. Or if you choose other ways of contraceptives, you need a doctor's control annually, and that's not available. And they cannot travel to the cities where it would be available. So it's all, I think that's an important issue, because you could reduce poverty and you could have a better life and vice versa.
Yes.
But it's in practice, I think it's very, very difficult, even if you take away religious and other cultural dynamics.
Yes. And then there was a case, I think it was from Netherlands, that they just wanted to sell the condoms, actually deliver the condoms to Africa, yes. But when during the way, actually something happened to condoms, yes, and they were not actually working any longer. so that's another problem, yes, about the transportation and so there are much more issues actually.
Yes.
Which are connected.
there is one issue, very important issue, is the capacity of women to negotiate safe sex. This is something that's not only about having access to condoms, because you can have a condom, but you may not be able to say, use it. Okay? So, that, of course, just having it on a shelf free of charge in a toilet doesn't mean anything, because there's more to it than that. And there are different issues, but I can't cover everything, unfortunately. But I just wanted to show you some reasons why we're talking about gender balance in decision-making bodies. And this argument was actually shared with me a politician from Portugal, who is a man, and then he was making a huge point that it's not because women are better than men, right? And that we all know. Talent doesn't have gender. However, if you have a diversity in your decision-making bodies, somehow they produce better results. So there have been studies on private sector, and the results show that if you have a gender diversity in your decision-making bodies of your companies, the performance of the company in terms of profitability is higher.
Yes.
And of course, if you look at the picture, it may look like, well, because before that all executives are men, and if you add women, they do better. And then some people may think, oh, that means women are better than men. No, it's because diversity is good. And that's why we want more women in decision-making bodies. This is a picture of a human development paradigm. If you look at a place where there are different types of trees and plants and flowers, some of them need more sun, and some of them need more shade, and some of them need more water, and some of them need more space. The job of an organization like UNDP is to provide those different support. Okay? If you just leave them in the same place and give them exactly the same condition, the sun is there for everybody, right? And then we water you twice a day. Some will survive and some will not, because there are trees which need more shade and there are trees which need more sun. So the job of organization like us is to make sure these things are provided. If in some countries boys need a bit more support so that they can actually go out and say, I want to be a stay-at-home dad, there has to be a support, policy support, programming support, mentality change. All these things need to be put in place so that that boy can also do that. Because what we are trying to say is not to just focus on women and then give them more space in employment. What we are saying is that let's give women and men all the choices that they can have. If women don't want to work, they should be able to do that. If men don't want to be the breadwinners, they should be able to do that. Why should they have to be told that they have to be the strong breadwinners and they have to be protectors and they have to do everything? Why do women are told that they have to produce children and stay home and become mothers and not working in public places? Why don't we give them both all the choices that they can have and the capacity to make those choices? Please do come and visit us on our website. Yes, please.
Hello. Is it time to ask questions?
Yes, it's time to ask questions.
Can I ask a question? Could you please summarize and help me to design the whole picture? Because sometimes we say that, you said, that men and women are different, they play different roles, but sometimes we talk about the equality, the equity between them. So can you somehow summarize all the cases and differentiate when they are equal and when they are not? in your opinion, of course.
The situation is basically this one, okay? So whatever you need to develop their full potential, the environment should be there to develop your full potential and pursue your dreams. Okay? Whatever you want to do in your life, you should be able to do that. The reality is that it's not the case for everyone. And it seems that statistics suggest that women are more disadvantaged than men in that sense. Okay? For example, women are less. Women are somehow encouraged to go into sectors which are paid less. Women do not seem to appear in political decision making. The world average right now is less than 18%. A proportion of women in the parliament. And when we think that women are more or less 50-50 in the world, why is that? And then you ask questions, and Women say, well, they feel that they're not supposed to do this job. And then the same, if you ask men, why are you not taking a parental leave? And they say they don't feel they're supposed to do that. Why? Oh, because I'm a man. Okay. Why does it have to be the answer? Why does it have, why you being a man should restrict your choices for your own life choices? So where we want to go should not be influenced by your gender, but where we are today are restricted by gender roles. So we want to move from here to there. In order to do that, we may have to put more emphasis on those who are disadvantaged right now. And that's why we talk about more women than more about men. But that doesn't mean that gender equality debates are only about empowering women. Yes.
Please. Do you think it is realistic to reach this equality in the future? How we can persuade traditional societies and not even traditional societies, like I'm coming from Ukraine and we don't have any single woman in the parliament. And it's not the most undeveloped country in the world. And another thing is that we cannot change the role of the woman to give birth to a child. Men never can do that. So anyway, there is some different opportunities in life, and we have to count on that somehow. Okay. And if the employer have a chance to employ a man or a woman, at least in Ukraine, he always would give preference to a man, because he's not going to go to maternity leave, and he won't ask to leave earlier from work, and etc.
Okay, that's very good. That's reality. Very true. Yes. Yes.
I think while the discussion on gender dimensions and environmental sustainability is going on, I think there is a direct link with income, disposable income at hand. Because when you're talking about improving the environment, improving the use of efficient use of energy, and there are suggestions about increasing the price of energy use, and the household spending on energy increases, then it affects women who have less money for water. And in Africa, there are different studies that have been proved. Especially in South Africa, there's a detailed study about the linkage between water and women. It's usually the women that buy water at home. So if the disposable income, which the man earns, more of it is used in consuming energy, what happens to something as basic as water, which means both sanitation and health?
Yes. Was that question in there? That am I supposed to answer?
Yes. there is a link between this debate on environmental sustainability and this income disposal.
Disposable income?
Yes, disposable income.
Well, that's luxury though, isn't it? Right?
But it's not luxury. Energy is a basic need.
Yes.
And you raise the price of energy needs because you want the air to be efficient use of energy. And it's affecting something much more basic, which is water. Because the family has a fixed income. If you raise the tariff for electricity, what happens to water? And if you don't have water, you can't wash your hands, you cannot flush the toilet. It becomes, I think the world will get worse with that. So I think that when thinking about the debate, other things should be played around with, other scenarios should be thought about.
Maybe I'm on the right slide here, right? Because if water is now you have to maybe spend more time going to collect free water from somewhere.
There is nothing like free water.
There is no free water?
Yes, because we've been taught to privatize, government should do less of social services. Like personally at home, I spend up to close to $100 on water per month. It's my responsibility as a woman, not that of a man. Even when the private tankers are there at home, my husband is on the bed sleeping. He doesn't bother about how I get the money for the water. And water is the basic. Without water, you can't.
So there is the equality issue here, gender equality issue, because someone who has to spend more time maybe to earn money, for example, right? Because there is not enough money to pay for everything, and you need to pay for energy and you need to pay for water. Somebody has to earn extra money, and who is more likely to be in charge of the domestic economy?
It's the woman.
So who's going to have to make more money?
The woman.
Right. So does it mean that the opportunities for women to develop themselves will be reduced? Because on top of everything else, now she has to come up with a way to earn extra money.
Yes.
Right? That is the point. If there are more equal distribution of work and responsibilities within households, perhaps both men and women can be earning money. We think of men and women as separate individuals very often and doing different things. But the fact of the matter is we live together and we live interdependent of each other. And we cannot say, let's just empower women this way and let's leave men behind because they'll come along. No, they won't. If we are changing women, the rest of the population has to change too. And the fact of the matter is women have changed. Look at this room, we have more women. If this course was held 25 years ago, I would be seeing more men, and I probably wouldn't be even standing here talking about gender equality.
That's how I can talk.
Let's have a final say from the man.
Final question, and then because we have also group work, and I was hinted that it's better to keep work-life balance on a program.
Yes.
And have a beer not at 11 p.m. but at 11. No, really, we don't want to overload. So last question.
I would like to agree with you that we need to seriously involve women in environmental issues. That's perfectly, But there is this equation I always have a problem with. Men and women are the same. Men and women are equal. And when you started the discussion, I think these things kept on coming. But just go back to your last slide, and I'll show you something.
The last one.
The flowers.
With the flowers.
Yeah. If you look at the flowers,
yes,
good. You said some of them require sunshine, others need shade, others need water. So it means that if there is so much light, some will die. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes.
If there is so much water, some cannot survive.
Right.
So they are not equal.
They're equal but different. They're equal in their right to survive, but they are different. Yes. Now, if you just look at a thing about different issues here, people with disabilities, for example. If you have a colleague who is in a wheelchair, what do? You provide them all the equipment and systems in place so that person is mobile. If the person is mobile, okay, let me just finish this little story. And the policy is there to make sure that everything that person needs to perform the duties are in place. The person is equal but different. If a woman has a role to produce children and have to be absent from employment for a certain period of time, that should not be used against them. The time being absent from work, which cannot be performed by men, should not be seen as a negative. The environment needs to be there to make sure when the woman wants to return to work, she will be retrained. And also another thing is that there should also be a place for men to participate in childcare. So we change the environment and not environment. Let the environment change you.
Can I ask a question? We have Olympic Games in London, like in July, if I'm mistaken. Two very short questions. The first one, do you think that women should compete with men, should run with them, like along with women? This is the first question. And the second, do you think that sportswomen should be paid as much as sportsmen? Paid. Compete with them and paid at the same level.
You are touching a very sensitive subject here. You know who is the world's best female football team in the world today?
No.
Japan?
I could little bit add on allocation of resources. It was 2009 in Slovakia, and it was huge floods that time. And villages asked Prime Minister for money because he had special fund, and he told, no, I have no money, sorry guys. At the very same time, he provided a grant for development of sport. And it was something like 50,000 euro, and it was provided to the lady who was exercising sport or fitness or something like that. And when you see her photo, you clearly understand why she got these, not these villages. I'm not completely sure it's a gender issue here, but it's quite interesting.
No, but the football issue was gender issue, inequality issue. Because you know what they do? They run for 90 minutes, the same side of the field. Right, same number of people. What's the difference? Men's football and women's football.
Could you please answer my two questions? Just should they run along?
No, I mean the second question. Should they be paid
and
equally?
Should they be paid then?
Yes, because they do the same thing. 90
it's not
minutes.
football. I mean, when they run 100 meters or 60 meters or 200 meters, should they run? Should they compete with each other?
No. Oh, to compete with each other? Yeah. Well, if they want, they can do that. I don't see any problem with that because there are women who run faster than some men, and some men are faster than other women, right?
Yes
so,
or no?
I mean, yes.
Just a small football team you can have.
But it's not about competition. We are living in the same community. We're living in the same society. If we don't support each other, we cannot be sustainable.
Yes.
We cannot have two pillars going up this way and never come together. That's not a picture of sustainability. We cannot live in a world where the resources are getting more and more scarce and the population is growing. And if we continue with the way we have been the last 100, 200 years, we'll not be sustainable. We have to change. And it's not only one part of the population who needs to change. The whole thing needs to change.
But actually, for like 2,000 years, let's say, the traditional family actually worked, yes?
I'm not so sure. I mean, it depends how you want to measure what worked, right? Traditional families, what do you mean how they worked? We have been still existent, but I think the notion is changing. The big family is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So there is a question of what do we mean by traditional families? That's also one question, right? Now I think I have to stop because.
You could take out Koh for a drink and continue discussion there, but now we have a time for group assignment. But before that, I would like to thank Koh for this interesting lecture. I think that our overtime says for itself. We cannot stop discussing this quite interesting topic. But now we have to stop and give the floor to Henrietta and Daniela Beck, who will tell you about